Easter? Why do they keep changing the date? Sometimes it's in March and sometimes it's in April. Now, most of you know part of the answer, but you don't know the whole answer. And some of you know the whole answer, but you don't really know why. And as Christians, that's an important date. So let's take a look at this. Determining the next date for Easter is like working a jigsaw puzzle. There's a lot of pieces that have to fall into the right place before the puzzle can be completed. How many of you have ever worked a jigsaw puzzle? Nearly everybody, okay. You have to put a lot of small pieces together to see the larger picture. You always need a starting point. Most likely you begin with the border or straight pieces, and for sure you'd like to start with the four corner pieces to get it started. So today we tried to put together a puzzle so we can see why Easter falls on a different date each year. A good starting place is the Hebrew calendar, also called the Jewish calendar. So either way I call it, we're talking about the same calendar. Now the Hebrew calendar is based on three astronomical phenomena. One, the rotation of the earth on its axis is 1 day. We can buy that, accept it. Two, the revolution of the moon around the earth is 1 month for the Jewish calendar. That we can't do, and you'll see why in a minute. So that's a difference. And the third one is the revolution of the earth around the sun, 1 year. Okay, we believe that too, and we're okay. 2 out of 3 is not bad, but that one throws a real kink in how we set the date for Easter. 2 out of 3 of these astronomical calculations we agree with. It's the one concerning the use of the moon to determine a month that's a problem. This is what is wrong with the Jewish calendar. Let's take a closer look at how they use it. Now, towards the beginning of the moon cycle, it appears as a thin crescent. That is the signal for a new Jewish month. The moon grows until it's full. This would be in the middle of the Jewish month. Toward the end of the month, the moon begins to wane until it cannot be seen. It remains invisible for approximately 2 days. Then the thin crescent reappears, and the cycle begins again. A new lunar month on the Hebrew calendar. You see how that works? All right, the problem with a lunar calendar is that the moon actually orbits the earth approximately every 29 and a half days. Now, since you cannot have a half a day in a month, the Hebrew calendar usually has 6 29-day months and 6 30-day months. As you can see, they're not consistent in their pattern of 29 and 30 months. And they differ from year to year as determined by the rabbi. So if you look at these months, that first one happens to be April. But it's 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, and then it may be 29, it may be 30, depending on the rabbi. The next one may be 29 or 30, then it's 29, it's 30, it's 29, or 30. The rabbi sets these, so their calendar changes all the time. Now, if you take Get your mathematical hats on so you can pay attention. 6 29-day months and 6 30-day months only add up to 354. Is that a problem? Sure it is. That would fall 11 days short of a normal 365-day year. If they added a 13th month, a 30-day month during the year, it would then be 384 days, and that'd be 19 days too many. You see, to add a month, the moon cycle, 29 and a half days, they either add 29 or 30. So they can't make their calendar work without adjusting it every single year. You're getting a picture in a minute of why Easter moves, because their calendar moves, and we'll show you. Here is just the same thing I said, but with numbers. 29 6-day months is 174 days. And then 6 30-day months would be 180. You add them up, it's 354. It's 11 days short of a year. It's hard to use their calendar. So if they add a 13th month, and you put that in there, now you're 19 days more than the 365. You see the problem with using, you cannot accurately use the moon to determine your months. You can see the inaccuracy in the Hebrew calendar as they tried to use the moon's rotation around the earth as 1 month. Mathematically, it does not work. Adjusting the calendar, if the Hebrew calendar was left unadjusted, picture this, being 11 days short each year, the months would continually drift backwards, and their normal spring months would soon be in the wintertime, right? And the fall months would go on back, and they would be in the summer months, and on, if you used their calendar. Now, to compensate for this shifting of the month, a 13th month is added every several years to try to catch up. It's similar to what we do, and every 4 years we add what? 1 day. It's leap year, because we're short and we catch up every 4 years. Well, it takes them several years to catch up. Remember, they can only add 29 days or 30 days of a month to their calendar, where we can add 1 day, because they're trying to stay with the moon cycles. So we can add 1 day and we can be caught up. They're going to have 29 or 30, yes.
Well, why does the rabbi care? Why does he fix it?
Wait later on and you'll see if you can't see this. Because he doesn't want the month to fall in the summertime 1 year, and then 6 months later that same month falls in the winter. So he's trying to do it. Why do we add a month, add a day? We're trying to keep it in line. And that's what they're trying to do. But they have full authority to make the decision. Not adding days leave the year short of days, and adding days make it over. So the Jewish rabbis add an additional month every several years to try to keep the number of days close to 365. They get real far away from it, you know, like 19, 20 days, they throw one in there back here, but it went this way. And then they wait for it to catch up. So about every 19 or 20 years, they can be caught up exactly. Ours, we're caught up out, just a minute, out of how many years? 4, okay. Now, it takes 19 years for these adjustments to bring the Hebrew calendar back into the line. How long do we say it takes us? 4. It takes them 19 years. But the cycle repeats itself. During this 19 year period, the Hebrew calendar has several leap years, they call them. The 3rd, the 6th, the 8th, the 11th, the 14th, the 17th, and the 19th year. We're not going to go any details into that. The last month, the 12th month in the Hebrew calendar is Adar. During a Hebrew leap year, the 13th month is added, and it is called Adar Shana, meaning the second Adar. So they about every 19 years add 1 month to try to realign to 365 days. Okay. Now, we're not finished with the Hebrew calendar yet, but let's look at another piece of the puzzle. Today's world calendar. We'll come back to the Hebrew calendar in a minute. We use the Gregorian calendar. The calendar that we use today is the most commonly used calendar around the world. It is called the Gregorian calendar, and it is referred to as a solar calendar, not a lunar calendar like the Hebrew calendar they use. There's another one called a Julian calendar. Anybody know what that is?
The Roman.
What this man back here?
Number of days of the year.
Yeah, you know, today could be number 92 out of 365.
Put the
We-
year ahead of the number of days.
Yeah, exactly. And this one is the most popular, the Gregorian. This is what we're used to. Now, our calendar is 365 days based on the fact that it takes that long for the Earth to complete one full orbit around the sun. Now, we all know that it really takes 365 and 1/4 days. However, that is easily adjusted by adding 1 day every 4 years. Much less complicated than the Hebrew lunar calendar. Our calendar uses 7 days in 1 week, same as the Hebrew calendar. It does impact on what day of the week certain American holidays fall on. Those holidays that are assigned a numerical day on the calendar, such as Christmas, is 12/25, or New Year's, January 1. They will fall on that same numerical date every year, but it'll fall on a different day of the week. But the numerical date does not change. Quite a difference in the two calendars. We have 7 days in 1 week, so if we divide 7 into 365 days, it does not come out with a whole number. So when you start a new year, it always starts with a new day of the week. That is why Christmas does not fall on the same day of the week each year. We make no adjustments to the calendar except for the leap year every 4 years to bring up to 365. We make no other adjustments to make Christmas fall on Sunday or one of the other days. We've looked at 2 puzzle pieces that play an important part in putting together the whole picture, but we haven't gotten to the Easter holiday yet. Now, you might be wondering at this point why we use think about this, a Jewish calendar to determine a date for a Christian holiday, Easter, when the Jews don't even believe in Jesus anyway. So why would we do that? There's a reason. Let's see if we can find the connection between the two. We know that Jesus rose from the grave on Sunday. Everybody agree with that? Anybody have a problem? But not just any Sunday. It was the first Sunday after the day of Passover. If you recall, Jesus celebrated the Passover dinner with his disciples on Thursday evening after dark. Now, when the sun went down Thursday evening and it got dark, that's the end of Thursday. It's now Friday, and Friday was Passover. So as soon as it got dark, we call it Thursday evening if we want to, but once it got dark, it's really Friday. But they were celebrating Passover once a year. A Jewish day started at sundown, therefore having a meal after sunset on Thursday was the beginning of the next day, Friday, which was their day of Passover. Knowing that Jesus was crucified on Friday, that's their Passover holiday, and he arose the following Sunday, it seemed proper for Christians to set the date of Easter as the first Sunday after the Jewish Passover. So if somebody asks you the question, when is Easter? You can give them the first part of the answer. Easter is the first Sunday, what? After Passover. It's the Passover that keeps moving around. That's the problem. That seems simple, just to say that, but not. The Jewish Passover was a moving target. Originally selecting the date that Christians celebrate Easter each year had to do with them when the Jews celebrated Passover, and the day they celebrated Passover each year was based on the Hebrew lunar calendar, which we just saw was very inconsistent. Because that calendar was such a mess, where they celebrated Passover was a mess. Therefore, early Christians had to wait on the Jewish rabbis each year to tell them when Passover would be before they could determine the date of Easter. The Jewish rabbis were very inconsistent about adding a month to the year and whether it would be 29 days or when it would be 30 days. So when do we celebrate Easter? Our best answer is the first Sunday after Passover. And all we have to know is the date of Passover. And we know when Easter is. Simple, right? Right. The Jewish Passover, listen to this, was always to be celebrated during a full moon. The Jewish Passover was always celebrated on a full moon. The original Passover was not on just any full moon, but the full moon after the spring equinox. I'm getting you confused now? Getting deep, isn't it? Okay. The special full moon was called a paschal full moon. The word paschal means Passover. The Jews established Passover as the first full moon after the spring equinox each year. And the way the Jews determined the day of the spring equinox was also based on this moving Hebrew lunar calendar. Spring equinox, it's a Latin meaning equal nights. We all know that the earth tilts on its axis as it rotates around the sun. It's winter for us in the northern hemisphere when the earth's upper half tilts away from the sun. And it's the summer when it tilts towards the sun in the northern hemisphere. Halfway around the sun, exactly between winter and summer, the earth axis is completely upright or untilted towards the sun. These 2 points are called the spring and the fall equinox, equal days and nights. So the spring equinox signals the beginning of spring. Christians were back to square one, waiting for the Jewish rabbis to tell them the date of the spring equinox on their calendar, so they could then calculate the date of the Passover and then determine when Easter was. Finally, in the year 1583, the Christian world decided to pick one single date for the spring equinox. They chose March 21st. The Jewish nation also accepted this date as the spring equinox. Now they no longer have to wait on the Jewish rabbis to tell them the date of the spring equinox, because we knew it now. So how is the date for Easter calculated? Easter is the first Sunday after the partial full moon, which is the full moon that falls on or after the spring equinox. Everybody got that? There's a test on that. And now we have a specific date for the spring equinox. It's March 21st. So, since Easter's to be the first Sunday after the first full moon, on or after the spring equinox, the earliest day Easter can be is March 22nd. March 21st is the equinox. If there's a full moon on that date or later on, then the Sunday that follows that full moon is Easter.
Yesterday.
That's the way it is done today. Everybody knew that when you came in this room, I know, because you're smart people. You're Christians. It's one of our most sacred holidays. But somebody asks you, what's the best answer to say? Easter is first Sunday after Passover. And then you hope they don't ask you when's Passover. Passover is the first full moon on March 21st or after.
Yeah.
And then that's when it. Woo! Y'all thought this was going to be easy, didn't you?
So why, if in fact we say the spring equinox, or the first day of spring is March 20th, why do our calendars, and we always celebrate March 20th as the first day of spring? 20th. My dad's birthday was March 20th, always the first day of spring, and it's on my calendar right here. March 20th is spring
Now
again.
you're messing up.
I don't know if they move it when they do the leap year.
It's the 20th. I think it's the
They might.
21st.
My dad would have been 100
Yeah.
on March 20th of this year, and I'll be 70 this year, and in my 70 years, spring has always
Maybe
been.
that would be more based on the fourth of a day
Yeah.
each year,
Possible.
but to calculate Easter, to calculate Passover, they now use March 21st
I'm sure glad
on there.
salvation-
So now we have a date to calculate from. Since the full moon occurs every 29 and a half days, the latest date that Easter can occur is April the 25th. It can't occur later than that.
Because
Is anybody confused now?
Yeah.
But you see what? It's not as simple as we think. Keep the simple answer. Easter is the first Sunday after Passover. Why? Jesus arose the first Sunday after the Passover. He changed the Passover meal for Christians to the Last Supper, or the Lord's Supper as we call it. He changed it from being a meal as a Passover meal to remember what happened in the Exodus from Egypt and how the death angel passed over because of the shed blood, and he changed that meal to be his blood shed on the cross instead of on the doorways, the last meal. And he arose the first Sunday after that. That's why we celebrate it that way. Let's recap. Easter is always on Sunday. Scripture tells us that Jesus rose from the grave on Sunday, the first day of the week. Easter is always on the first Sunday following Passover. Scripture tells us that Jesus observed the Passover meal with his disciples on Thursday evening after sundown, meaning that Passover was on Friday, the day of his crucifixion. Fact 3, Passover is celebrated on the partial full moon, which is the first full moon after the spring equinox. Most of the world now sets March 21st as the date each year for the spring equinox, mainly for that reason. It really wouldn't be. Simplest answer, Easter is the first Sunday following the first full moon on or after March 21st. That is the full answer to the date that they said. You want to see how it looks like on a calendar? I did this before back in 2014. March 21 is the spring equinox. The full moon in that year fell on the 16th. Well, that's not on or after March 21st, is it? Has no meaning. 29 and a half days later, the partial full moon fell on the 15th. And if it fell on the 15th, that was their Passover. And if that was their Passover on April the 15th, which date would be Easter?
20th.
The 20th. You're smarter than you thought you were a while ago when you were kind of shaking your head. So this year I built a new one for March, and so we could do the same thing. The full moon was on the 12th. Well, that was for March 21st. If you put the equinox on the 21st, the next full moon happened on the 11th. So Easter's on, and then Passover would be that day. So what date would Easter be this year?
16th.
The 16th. And it fits. Makes a little more sense when you see it than when you just hear it. The date of Easter is not important. The meaning of Easter is what is important. Jesus came to earth as a baby born in a manger. Jesus walked on earth and he preached the Word of God. Jesus suffered pain and agony for you and I. Jesus was nailed to a cross for you and I. Jesus died on the cross so you and I could live forever. Jesus was buried in a tomb. Jesus defeated death and he rose from the grave. "40 days later, Jesus ascended into heaven. Jesus died, he arose, he ascended into heaven, and Jesus will return soon. The date's not what's important. It's what he did that's important for us.
I see me, that little bitty short one.
That's possible, you just barely made it.
That's all right, I'm there.
Okay, I have 5 minutes.